Beyond Khyber Pass by Lowell Thomas. Chapter 1. Through Waziristan on the way to High Asia. 3 forbidden lands for us of the West lie in Asia. The first is Holy Arabia, the region of the sacred Mohammedan cities of Mecca and Medina. The second is Tibet, far up on the roof of the world, the meeting place of the winds of earth, where His Serene Highness the Dalai Lama, the reincarnation of the Buddha, rules over the warrior monks who dwell in vast monasteries on the rocky summits of the Himalaya. The third is the land of another mighty range, the Hindu Kush, south of the Oxus River and beyond the northwest frontier of India, Afghanistan. The door is the Khyber Pass, a door that has refused to swing back to all save a very few of the seekers of adventure who have attempted to pass that way. From the days of Marco Polo to the present time, fewer of the travellers who have brought back tales from these far places have told us of the life of the people who dwell in the mountains of Afghanistan than have unveiled the mysteries of either Holy Arabia or Tibet. The swaggering Afghan has good reason to swagger. The independence of his wild mountainous country, placed squarely between two jealous rivals, the bear to the north and the lion to the south, has remained intact. All the more remarkable this when one considers that Afghanistan is the gateway to India, with its incalculable wealth. Throughout history, Afghan trails have echoed to the march of northern hosts that looked with lustful eyes on India's riches. Scythian, Persian, Greek, Seljuk, Tatar, Mongol, Durrani, these and others have plundered India through the Afghan door. Few invaders of the ages gone by have been checked en route by the Afghans. The latter have usually joined with enthusiasm each super raid and temporarily united forces of the powerful armies that swept resistlessly through to the lush lands of the south. Yet the freedom-loving mountaineers, hiding in ravine and cave, later waged incessant guerrilla warfare on all who passed their way. And after the wave of each fresh invasion of India subsided, they continued in possession of their territory. This sovereignty they hold undisputed today, except for the Khyber Pass and parts of Waziristan, which are occupied by a strong British army, and the narrow zone of democracies, ruled solely by tribal council, between Afghanistan and the northwest frontier province of India. Afghanistan dislikes the foreigner. Centuries of unpleasant experience with invaders, coupled with the mountaineers' natural love of independence, have bred this feeling. Those of the wilder tribes of Afghanistan, especially in the independent territory, and Waziristan, who object to the rule of the Emir and the Viceroy of India alike, are prone to give token of their enmity to the foreigner in the shape of whining bullets that oftener than not reach their mark. Therefore, official British India, taking cognizance of the Afghans' preference for their own company exclusively, has inserted the words, "It is absolutely forbidden," in the conspicuous warning against entering Afghan territory which is posted at the end of the Khyber Pass. Through British, Indian and American diplomatic channels, during 2 years in the East, I had vainly sought for my camera colleague, Harry Chase, and myself permission to enter Afghanistan. It is an isolated country in which there are no railroads and practically no means of communication with the outside world, except by courier. America has no official acquaintance with the Emir, and there has been so much friction in the past between the Afghans and the British that an introduction from them might be considered in the light of an introduction from a man's oldest enemy. Just when I had given up all hope and was preparing to sail from Bombay, an invitation to visit Afghanistan came from the Emir in roundabout fashion through the American charge d'affaires at Tehran in Persia. So once more, our party recrossed India for 1,500 miles on our way to the Afghan frontier, a journey that was to take us into a country wholly Eastern in character, lawless in many ways, fascinatingly untouched by civilization. Afghanistan has no outlet to the sea because to the south, between it and the Arabian Sea, lies Baluchistan, a country of arid desert, mountains and plateaus, now ruled by the British in India. To the east are Waziristan, a territory partially under British military occupation, the tribal region known as the Independent Territory, extending from Khyber Pass in southern Waziristan to Kashmir and the northwest frontier province of India, which includes part of Waziristan, the Khyber Pass country, the Peshawar district, Kohistan and Chitral, bordering on Kashmir. To the north of Afghanistan lie Bukhara and other turbulent states of Russian Turkestan, and to the west is Persia, all names that fair tingle with romance. I decided to follow a natural geographical route to Kabul, capital of Afghanistan, and visit Baluchistan, Waziristan, and the Independent Territory on the way to Peshawar and the Khyber Pass. After travelling north from Bombay through Rajputana, we crossed the Sindh Desert by train and ascended the mountains by way of the Bolan Pass to Quetta, the most important military centre for the forces holding British Baluchistan and one of the strongest strategical positions in the world. The people here are of an entirely different type from those encountered on the plains of India. Fine, stalwart-looking fellows with bulging turbans wound round cone-shaped caps of gold thread, which make them look like taller giants than they are. In the Quetta Bazaar, we pass hundreds of these Baluchis, Afghans, and Pathans of the border region. They wear bushy beards, baggy trousers, and heavy red leather slippers with upturned toes. There is none of the grovelling and salaaming among them that one sees in the plains. They have an independent air that excites admiration. Their expression does not encourage the Sahib to strut as he is tempted to do in many parts of the East. For some reason, possibly because they live a little nearer the enervating Tropic of Cancer, the Baluchis are not quite so fierce as their Afghan neighbours, and they have finally become reconciled to the British Raj. From Quetta, we pass through the pink mountains of Baluchistan, mountains far pinker than the Dolomites, and then returned over part of our route and continued our journey north to Waziristan. To reach this barren, inhospitable country, after leaving the railway, you must cross the Indus River. During the spring of the year, when the floods are on, the bridges are washed away, and the usual method of getting over is by swimming on an inflated goatskin. At the time of the rains, the Indus swells in many places, until it is from 3 to 10 miles wide, and swimming across becomes an art. You have to hold one end of the skin in your mouth and keep blowing it up all the time. I tried it, but when I was blowing, I forgot to swim and was swept downstream. And when I tried to swim, I forgot to blow and nearly sank. So strong and swift is the current that you usually land several miles downstream on the opposite shore. Men with goatskins sit on the bank at strategical points, waiting for travellers to come along and hire these individual goatskin ferry boats. During the dry season, the Indus narrows to a width of a few hundred yards. Long pontoon bridges are thrown across by the British, and over the bridge near the city of Dera Ismail Khan, the gateway to Waziristan, come strings of camels, bringing supplies from the port of Karachi on the Arabian Sea to the Indian army in Waziristan. When you first reach Waziristan, you ask why Great Britain bothers about holding this desert region. For 30 years, the British have been bickering with the frontier tribes. Respite and lulls there have been. There has never been peace. Back to the Indus has been a popular cry among Indian pacifist agitators, as well as among certain factions of the British themselves since the World War. Although, among others, who are more aggressive, advance to the cartographic line supposed to indicate the borders of Afghanistan has been the watchword. This latter policy is the one that keeps the Afghans from becoming too enthusiastically pro-British. Both policies are dangerous. The British in India cannot easily relinquish what tribal territory they have seized in this part of Asia, and India cannot well afford to have the frontier army withdrawn and considerable numbers of Indians left to be disemboweled by the raiding Masuds, Waziris, and Afridis, as they surely would be if the troops retired behind the Indus. nor can the British initiate any forward movement that would precipitate another and fourth Afghan war and lead into Central Asiatic adventures that daunted even the redoubtable Great Moguls. The British can afford neither to get on nor to get out. They are in Waziristan, and no doubt destined to remain there for a generation or two more, unless the Indian volcano blows up and hurls the British Raj into the Indian Ocean. They gave us the impression of making the best of a bad job. Already a network of roads has been built through hitherto unadministered districts in Waziristan, and an attempt is being made to cajole the predatory tribes into carving homes for themselves out of the region in which they dwell, rather than carving the innards out of their Hindu neighbours. As for ourselves, now that we are away from it all, we thank God that we are thousands of miles away from Waziristan, with its wolf-like inhabitants, its appalling barrenness, its hellish temperatures, its cities filled with dust and dirt, disease and sudden death. As we view it from afar, it comes back to us as the very navel of bedevilment. Surely the men who guard such plague spots on Britain's far-flung battle line deserve much gratitude from stay-at-home Englishmen, more indeed than they are likely to get. When you clamber, puffing and panting, up the bank of the Indus and dismount from your inflated aquatic goat, and when you have made your way for a mile or two over the blistering sand, you pass through a high mud wall and straightway plunge into Central Asia. Dera Ismail Khan is one of the cities of the frontier whence caravans, having unloaded at the caravanserai, swing through the bazaars and across the deserts and mountains to countries that have changed but little since the days of Timur the Tartar, known as Tamerlane, Kublai Khan, and Baber the Great. But Dera Ismail Khan is more than a picturesque Asiatic city. It is a great military base, headquarters for the British and Indian forces in Waziristan, which cause Amir Amanullah of Afghanistan and his war board to think twice before they contemplate imitating the example of Muhammad of Ghor or Nadir Shah, who coveted the riches of Hind. We stayed in Dera Ismail Khan just long enough to be nearly eaten alive by mosquitoes and other less audible inhabitants of the town, and to make our peace with the gaunt-looking, heat-stricken officers of the headquarters staff. Then we started across the Badlands, gradually making our way to Tank, Bannu, Kohat, Peshawar, through the Khyber Pass to Landi Kotal, and into Afghanistan proper. The cars in which we travelled looked as hoary with age as the Eocene mountains that were the principal feature of the topography. Shortly after we had left behind the rose gardens of the bungalows at headquarters in Dera Ismail Khan, our right front tyre blew off and disappeared up a nullah. Later we were obliged to install a stepney on the left rear rim, and developed in consequence a swinging movement like that of a Delhi dancing girl in the mazes of the Nautch. Our trail was punctuated by disabled Fords and Crossleys. 13 different cars relayed us from the Indus to the Khyber, every one of them ready to fly into bits when we entered it, a derelict when we left it. Scores of times we were stranded and obliged to roast in the desert heat, while a bang-drugged Sikh or mad Moslem driver fiddled ineffectually with the carburetor. In the end, it was usually necessary for Harry Chase to tie things together with his camera straps until we chugged into the nearest military depot. Those natives of some parts of Asia who have been graduated from driving camels to driving automobiles are not only frenzied fanatics in matters religious, but are also mechanical maniacs when they get their hands on a motor car. When they are at a motor transport depot, they sit around, chewing betel nut and drinking bowls of bang and chattering like apes at the Benares Monkey Temple, instead of tuning up their mounts. Later, when they have you miles from the nearest relief station, they pick out a hot valley where the heat radiates from the surrounding rocks with the ferocity of the nethermost pit, cut off the engine, sputter about lack of tools, and try to overhaul the car while you sweat and pant and curse in a medley of Hindustani, Pushtu, the Afghan language, and American. Every man cultivates his temper when he gets to this part of Asia, if he possesses the seeds of one. You sit by the broken car and feel your temper rising like the fires of Stromboli. Yet the country has a certain fascination. There are British officers who have spent all their lives on the frontier and leave it not by choice, but only the necessity. Then they retire to Ealing or to Cheltenham to enjoy their well-earned pension of £700 a year and tell their sons and nephews who are to follow in their footsteps of Ghazis, the warrior fanatics of Islam, and of raids and wars in the bleak hills of faraway Waziristan. Who shall say in what the fascination lies? The grey hills that jag into the turquoise sky, the little green valleys, the mournful beauty of the dawns and twilights, the majestic cirque of hills that girds the fertile plain of Peshawar, the sunlit plain of Kohat as it stretches out from the pass, the desolate gorges and snowy saltpetre of the river by Bahadur Khel. These things weave a spell, in recollection anyway, that will hold the memory when many more beautiful scenes are forgotten. 45 miles across the desert is our first day's run. This brings us to the city of Tank, which is pronounced Tonk, for the same reason apparently that the English call halfpenny halfpenny and St. John's Sinjin. But before we had been there long, we dubbed it Tank the Terrible. It is a huddle of hovels on a parched plain. Although all the cities and towns of the Afghan frontier have a sameness about them, the same veiled ladies and collyrium-eyed boys, the same roses and rags, Tank, compared with Dera Ismail Khan, during the heat of the summer, is like the depths of inferno contrasted with purgatory. Tank is in the Masud country. You perhaps have never heard of the Masuds, unless you are British and have lost a relative at their hands. Rudyard Kipling, in all probability, was thinking of their territory when he wrote, "When you're wounded and left on Afghanistan's plains, and the women come out to cut up what remains, just roll to your rifle and blow out your brains, and go to your gourd like a soldier,